Democratic presidential candidate, RFK Jr., noted environmental lawyer, also anti-vaxxer, graced the Joe Rogan experience with his presence, where he took the time to spout a number of lies about vaccines and whatnot, and especially sort of played into the whole mystery of his name, being played into the idea that his uncle was murdered by the CIA, I believe he said. But anyway, here's a little snippet of that. Here's just like two great minds sparring about vaccines on the biggest podcast, perhaps, in the country.
How the system actually works to go against people that are dissenters. I have no questions because I was in the middle of it. I saw it. I saw it happen. I saw the CNN thing where they made my face yellow and said I was taking horse medication, which is that to say that and to repeat that over and over again is such a clear indication that they conspired. It's such a, because it's uniform. It's horse dewormer, uniform. A medication that's used far more often in human beings. It's been prescribed for
billions.
Yeah, it's insane. And the fact
and won the Nobel Prize for efficacy in humans.
Yeah, in humans.
Yeah,
it was wild. It was just wild.
They had to do it. They had to discredit ivermectin because because there's a federal law. The federal law, the emergency use authorization statute, says that you cannot issue an emergency use authorization to a vaccine if there is an existing medication that has been approved for any purpose that is demonstrated effective against the target illness. So they had to destroy ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and discredit it, and they had to tell everybody it's not effective, because if they had acknowledged that it's effective in anybody, the whole $200 billion vaccine enterprise would have collapsed.
Yeah, we're not allowed to fight diseases if there's already a vaccine for it. Right? Like, that's the rule, that anyone who is, has polio is not allowed to actually be administered any working medicine for it. And you can't talk about that because then it would discredit the polio vaccine. Sam, right?
Well, I mean, what Bobby is saying is true in terms of the policies, except for the fact that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are found to be completely ineffective in treating COVID.
Well, not if you want to shit not COVID, but if you do want to just shit out everything you ate and sort of keep a slim figure, I hear ivermectin works quite well.
It works great for that, but like he said, the target disease or virus or whatnot, and recall also, to be clear, like it was the Trump administration that had the ability to dispense with ivermectin and hydrochloroquine like months. We did not have the vaccine until late November, even close till late November of 2020. There was hundreds of thousands of people who died in between.
Oh yeah.
There was no vaccine at that point. There was no drug profits at that point. They had already gotten the money. They could have developed it. The ivermectin could have functioned. We know that Johnson & Johnson, essentially the U.S. government stopped ordering more and more from those. We know that they were able to shut those down when they were problematic. The theory that Kennedy is espousing is not accurate. I should say also, just for full disclosure, Bobby and I worked together for many years doing a radio show. I did
not know that.
Yes, and I have a sort of a personal relationship with him. I mean, we didn't hang out per se, but we certainly were friendly. Like we have texted, and I was aware years ago of his what I would consider an anti-vax perspective, because his primary theory of what was problematic with childhood vaccines, that there was thimerosal in these vaccines, and it was the cause of the increase in diagnoses of autism, was a function of the thimerosal. When the thimerosal was taken out of the vaccines, and 3 or 4 years, that was back in 2001, we would have seen a drop in autism rates in 2004, 2005, 2006. We did not. And in fact, he had written a piece about the thimerosal that was pulled by Rolling Stone and Salon back in 2005, I think it was. He had published it earlier, but it was actually literally pulled because it was considered such disinformation. And he just sort of pivoted to, well, they didn't really take out the thimerosal or whatnot. I mean, there are reasons why the mercury in thimerosal is considered not as in any way as much of a neurotoxin as like the mercury we might, get in the air from burning stuff. But
just on that really quickly, because this is the Vice article that Joe Rogan, it triggered him wanting, RFK to debate an actual vaccine scientist. Online, if you've been following. But Kennedy, again, on Rogan in this very long conversation, talked about mercury in vaccines and conflated ethyl mercury, which is considered hazardous to human health, and methyl mercury, which is considered dangerous even in small doses. So not considered. So meaning like stuff that's in like fish and whatnot versus actual, like if you ingest it, that will be poisonous to you. We talked about RFK Jr. on this show with our friends over at Conspirituality and sort of tracking the descent into this anti-vax world that is now incredibly, that's on fire and only made worse by, I think, a medical system that is prohibitive for a lot of folks, and it has led to a lot of eyebrows being raised, obviously, from all people, and the amount of profit that is being made in big pharma or in the private insurance industry is terrifying and awful at our expense. So it is a perfect, and Naomi Klein wrote an excellent piece about this, a perfect storm for someone like RFK to rise. And she wrote, basically, we should not ignore him. We ignore RFK Jr. At our own peril. He's landed an endorsement from Jack Dorsey. He has been fundraising in the Bay Area. According to a CNN poll in May, support for Kennedy was at 20% among respondents who identified as Democratic or Democratic leaning. He benefits from all of that swirling narrative energy merely by showing up, because he sort of played into the QAnon stuff. He's openly begun to support the claim that CIA was behind the murder of his uncle and father, something he says he came to only around 5 or 6 years ago, or whenever you all started talking about it. And basically, she goes into the fact that, like, he says all the right things in terms of climate change, in terms of extinction, in terms of poisoned water wells, but that he doesn't actually believe that we should have tougher regulations, actual like penalties for corporations that do pollute and contaminate, to be climate ready or anything like that. He's just using this populist rhetoric. And she even says that he's tapping into, as she says, a wellspring of real pain and outrage, though, because a great many voters are hurting and angry about powerful corporations controlling their democracy, profiting off of disease and poverty, endless wars draining national coffers, maiming their kids, about stagnating wages and soaring costs. This is the world inflamed on every level that the two-party duopoly has knowingly created. She then goes ahead and debunks that, and sort of we debunk that. But what do you make of it, Sam, as someone who knows him and sees the sort of apple that he's biting off of, and and what is his end game here?
I'm not sure of any of that. Like we had a couple of exchanges over the years about the vaccines. Some, I think one was on the radio. We did a show, Ring of Fire radio together. And then, somewhere around 2013, I think, or 14, he left the show and I was doing it solo. We had been doing it with Mike Papantonio. I don't have insight into why. I suspect he believes what he says, frankly. I don't really have any hard theories as to why he's so open to such things. I can speculate, but I think that like the thing from a leftist perspective is, and this is what I have noticed, is that and he is sort of like backing off a little bit on his climate change stuff, which is weird. He has been running much more as a libertarian. If you believe, and I do believe, and he also, I should be clear, he's also a tort lawyer. And I have spent a lot of time in that world because of Pap Antonio and going to a tort convention twice a year. And if you believe, like I do, and I think he seems to, that the profit motive will allow a company that has developed a product that isn't necessarily safe to disseminate it and ignore that. I don't think they set out to develop something that's not safe, but I do think that dynamic happens because of the profit motive. The obvious thing for you to recommend, if you're going to be president or in any position to influence policy, or you have a platform, is to say, we need to take the profit motive out of this exchange. This transaction cannot, we need to have the US government produce more medications, more drugs. We don't need to, we can contract maybe a Pfizer to develop we can use their facilities, but we as a US government should develop it and keep the profits on this. If there's any, I mean, obviously the government wouldn't do it with profits, but the point is he won't suggest nationalization of this apparatus. He won't suggest an expanded role of government to produce this thing. We already have the capacity to do it. The VA produces a lot of generic drugs as it is now. We should be in the business of California is planning to do development of insulin.
Right.
We can do this, but he doesn't recommend these things. And I think that's why, people should be particularly suspicious about him running as a supposed progressive or whatever he wants to refer to himself. I don't understand. In terms of an end game, like this guy's doing a lot of right-wing media.
Yeah.
We just, and I was saying this over the past couple of days, and then Steve Bannon yesterday had a very weird clip where he was talking about, and it is, I think, public record that Bobby has met with Bannon, has met with Roger Stone, was convinced to enter the race because of John Zogby, a right-wing pollster, showed him good numbers. I don't know what Kennedy's end game is, because he's not going to win the Democratic nomination. But I can tell you that like Bannon seems to be, I'm sure they were interested in some chaos on the Democratic side, but Bannon was talking as if maybe there needs to be a coalition between Trump and Kennedy in the general election. Like that wouldn't surprise me based upon everything I've seen so far.
I think it'd be a good choice. I mean, sorry, Marjorie, but it ain't gonna be you. Sorry, Nikki. I think that, both Roger Stone and Steve Bannon have said, wow, what a ticket. Trump, RFK Jr. I mean, obviously, like red meat for the QAnon base, but red meat for all the like anti-vax, even like weird wellness people, the people who are like responding to him saying the right things. But again, as you're saying, definitely more of a libertarian than any kind of, social democrat or progressive or anything. So, yeah,
and let's be clear. I can tell you that there is no doubt in my mind that in the homes of older Black folk living in places like Philadelphia or Milwaukee or in Detroit, you will find pictures of Bobby Kennedy Sr., of RFK hanging in those homes. And, you're talking between those three states in 2020, 40,000, 50,000 votes was the difference in the election. 70,000 maybe it was over the course of those 3 or 4 states. I mean, I don't know if Kennedy would do it, but if I was Donald Trump, I could think of a lot stupider things to do than pick him as a vice president after he gets maybe, let's say 15, 20%, 10% you don't need much in the Democratic election.
That's fucking terrifying.
It's terrifying.
The final thing I'm going to say is it's where he was speaking my language is they have a moment where they, Rogan, I just have to play this one little thing and then we can move on.
So what do you think Wi-Fi is doing to us since it's everywhere and since everyone's experiencing, including you? What do you think it's doing to us?
I think it degrades your mitochondria. And it opens your blood-brain barrier.
Do you see anything online of how it could open up your blood-brain barrier?
I don't know about how, but that
it does?
I found an article. I was trying to find the validity of it, but
So while they work on the validity of the article, but I don't want
There's an article on the internet. Must be real.
I mean, seriously, I look, you could Google anything and be right. I don't want my mitochondria degraded or my blood barrier, which I didn't even know I had a blood barrier, but it sounds important. I don't want that degraded, but I'm someone who's totally like, I don't know. We got a lot of like Wi-Fi. I'm not a 5G-er. I love 5G, but I'm like, there's a lot of Wi-Fi. It hasn't been fully studied. Who knows? I'm saying if you take a little mouse, you put you give the mouse like a bunch of smartphones, and you put a mouse on TikTok, Sam. What I'm going to say is, its mitochondria will be so decimated. But this is the thing. It's like tapping into a actual concern that I think a lot of people have, that like, yeah, the amount of like Wi-Fi, 5G, etc. Like maybe that's not good for us in the long term. And it completely, again, the right owns it. I started this whole show by talking about how like the right owns any criticism of the feminist movement. Like the right owns any criticism of all of these things that we like, we talk about, like anything to do with Wi-Fi, anything like, so it's just, it makes us retreat into these ridiculous camps. Now I'm like defending Wi-Fi,
Well, I mean, look, it's possible that Wi-Fi and cell phones are have a negative impact. There's no research that there's not a lot of research that's done, frankly, about it. And here's the thing, I'm not worried if half the people who listen to that show decide like, I'm getting rid of my Wi-Fi. I'm going to throw away my cell phone.
It'll be great for them.
I think there would probably be a real benefit to them. But when you start talking about public health policy in terms of vaccines, and you start talking about medications, you're talking about people dying. And you're talking about not only people dying over the course of COVID, but also we are so screwed. If there is another pandemic that hits this society, or this world, I should say, within the next like 50 years, we're so screwed. I can't even believe it. And if it's more lethal, we're really, I mean, it's going to be a disaster because of this stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, the last thing I'm just going to say is that this Vice article actually asked Motherboard tried to get a statement from Spotify, got a spokesperson, given that they were basically casting a lot of doubt and sharing a lot of misinformation about the vaccine. They insisted that Rogan and Kennedy had not broken their rules, their terms of service, since while the two suggested during their conversation that COVID vaccines are ineffective and are injuring and killing large numbers of people, they did not explicitly say that they were designed to do so. Instead, they spent a lot of time ruminating about how young people are suddenly dropping dead, and a clear nod, but blah, 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 blah. Basically, they did everything but say it was by design.
Right.
So that episode can stay up. It's all good. No worries.
Spotify's got a lot of investment, $200 million they've invested in that show. They want their returns. This is corporations doing exactly what Bobby Kennedy says the drug companies are doing. They don't care what product they're putting out or who gets harmed by it because of profits.
What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.